Alright, I'm about to repair a hollow ground thinning shear. What happened with this shear is obviously a tooth has been bent. When the shear closes, the straight blade wants to strike up against one of the teeth along the length of the tooth blade on this thinner. It's a 4420 thinner. More than likely what has happened is this tooth has been bent in just slightly. You can see here in the video where it's wanting to make contact with the tooth. I'm going to rotate this around and I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm not sure in the video if this will come in clear enough. It's hard for me to see on the screen that I'm shooting this on as to whether or not you can see that there's actually almost like a little bit of a ding or a nick that's on the inside of that blade as well. So what we're going to do to start this off, we'll go ahead and take the shear apart. Let's spread it apart so we can close it, and we'll take the shear apart. Make sure that we put our parts in a safe place. Check for washers, make sure everything is out. Okay, first things first. Number one, this is actually not WD-40, this is water in an old WD-40 bottle. We're going to put this water on our water stone. We're going to make a pass or two across the water stone and see what happens as far as where that tooth is striking. Now on the tooth, I'm not actually seeing anywhere where I'm getting like a real heavy strike off of that tooth. So if it's bent, it's not bent too badly. So what we're going to do is we're just going to track it back and forth across the water stone, just like we would if we're just cleaning up the inside edge, and see if that actually alleviates the problem. Whenever you work on the water stones, you should have your shear at about a 45-degree angle. And in this case, I'm just putting a little bit of extra pressure on the tips of the teeth that were giving me some trouble. So we're going to come to a complete stop before we lift off, and we'll go ahead and wipe the shear down. First thing I want to do is just assess the inside of the shear. So I'm going to take a look and see what I did. And take a look at those teeth. Now, there is a slight bit of a bow in one set of the teeth, about maybe 4 or 5 of them right in this general area, which is where the other blade was striking before. So before I go any further with this, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and put the shear back together and see where I'm at on this repair. Always pay attention when you take a shear apart. You want to make sure that when you put it back together, you put it back together in the proper orientation. Alright, we'll close this up, see if we can make it past that tooth. Which now we can, although it still wants to strike just a little bit on one of the teeth. Which means there's still a slight bend in that tooth. So what we're going to do next is we're actually going to take the shear and with our white hone, this is the Wolf White Hone. It's available through Wolf, and it comes typically with the Okami Gold, although it is available separately for about $5 or so. We're actually going to work the inside of those teeth that are actually making contact with that blade. Just so that we can make a slight ramp so that that blade can get by. Now we can open and close the shear freely, and even with a little bit of side pressure, we have a good cut all the way down the shear itself. Now, what I'm going to do at this point is I'll go ahead and I will sharpen up just the straight blade, and then we'll see where we're at as far as the test cut is concerned. In this case, because this is still a fairly new blade, I'm going to start with the 15 and bring up my initial burr. I'm going to start my scratch test at about 40 degrees on this thinner, just to see where I'm at. Looks like it's a good touch, so we'll go ahead and bring a burr up, do a slight rotation until we get this thing sharpened up. There's our burr starting to come up. Okay, and we've achieved a burr along the length of the blade. Now there's a little bit of a nick that was actually cut into that initial blade, and I may end up having to switch to a 30 to deal with that, but I don't think so. Alright, let's make sure that we rotate this in so we can get it fully convex back out again. Whenever you have a nick in a blade, you always want to be certain that you sharpen past the nick. Otherwise, the shear will continue to re-nick over the top of itself over time. Alright, stop with the 15, switch over to the 9, and now we're just doing a little bit of extra cosmetic work on the front surface. Alright, I'll take this out, move this over just a smidge, and we'll work the inside of the straight blade. Now, whenever you have a thinning shear, you'll always notice on the inside that it's double hollow ground. The reason for this is because there's such a heavy drop from the actual where the cutting edge normally would be on most shears down to the cutting edge that it has to be double hollow ground so that you can make contact with the other blade and create a good inside line all the way from the tip all the way back down up over that little step down and then back to the back ride area. If you didn't have that double hollow grind, you would not be able to recreate that good inside line or ride line. We'll start with pressure over the nail hole. First finger in front of the finger that's over the screw hole or nail hole, whichever one you want to call it. And both of these two fingers are where you put your pressure. We'll just walk the two fingers down here. These are just a guide. And we're just going to work back and forth on this blade. Recreate that inside line. In that first pull back towards myself, I've deburred the blade as well. So we'll wipe down the inside. Take a look at the inside line that I've just recreated. And it looks pretty good in all areas except right in this one little spot right here. And I don't know how that's going to come through in the video. But I'm going to go ahead and continue working until I bring that all the way in. Always come to a complete stop before you lift off. You never have to worry about swiping your inside edge when you do your work. And that looks better. We'll go ahead and we'll do a quick polish. And then we should be ready to put this back together and see how she cuts. So we'll switch over to our polishing pad. Set our shear and our clamp. When you set the shear and the clamp, always make sure that you seat your scissor all the way down into the very back side of the clamp on the hira-to. That way you won't have any play in the shear. You don't have to worry about it moving up and down when you're doing your work. And this has already been charged, so I can go ahead and just start polishing without putting any compound on here. There is another video that I'll provide a link to in Gymsharp on my blog that'll show you how to apply compound to this wheel. And now all I'm doing is I'm just doing the cosmetic work and I'm bringing up a new edge with the actual polishing disc. What we'll do is we'll rotate this around, just take a look and check the cosmetics of the shear, which looks pretty good. Alright, I'm going to shut this down, set this over to the side. Wipe off any remaining burr. I usually go and wipe from the inside of the shear and then wipe down the outside to remove any burrs as well. We'll put the shear back together. Didn't follow my own rules about keeping everything in a safe place. I didn't put it back in my little bin here. One of those do as I say, not as I do things. Shear back together. Okay. I want to check and see how much play there is, and we're going to go ahead and close the shear, removing any burrs very lightly, and I'm actually spreading the blade slightly as I do this as well to ease the tension as the blade closes. And then we can test on some paper towel to see how the cut is, and you can see that we've got a good clean cut all the way along the paper towel where the blades are going to make contact. You want to do about 2 or 3 cuts, make sure it's cutting all the way through, and it should perforate the paper towel. So we have a good cutting shear right now.